Hello! So for materials you need weight 4 yarn. I ended up buying 2 colors of the weight 4 yarn and I had 4 of the Caron pound ones. Then you need stitch markers and threading needles and a 6mm hook. And then some scissors. First you start off with chaining the desired width of the back with color number 1. I wanted more of an oversized look, but you can see it's enough to cover the back and the front of me. Now we're going to half double crochet in each chain for 10 rows before we switch onto our next color, making another stripe. With color number 2 you go in, I just use a slip stitch and not untie off the first color and just go right into it. I like to crochet over my ends so that you don't have to see them, and while I crochet over them I like to pull them tight and then unscrunch them. You'll see what I do. But we're going to half double crochet another 10 rows, and throughout the whole cardigan you can see that we use the same 10 rows as the height of each stripe, and it ends up looking really nice. But you can see I have 2 black and white ends, and I just chain 1 and crochet over them so that you don't see them later. Now you can see I repeated the same 10-10 pattern until it was long enough that I wanted. So I measured from like the top of my shoulder all the way down to around my ankles. And then we're going to start with the neck after we do this. We'll start with the front two sides. So you want to count how wide your neck is. For me it was like 12, so I just line it up and count, how many stitches was about the width of my neck. After you count how many, you want to subtract that from the number of chains you started with and divide by 2. And that's going to be the number of half double crochets we do on one side. So before it said I had 29, if I can remember my numbers, I really don't remember them. But and I'm not going to crochet down the whole row. I'm just going to crochet that number, and I'm going to do it for 10 rows. So we're kind of like splitting the back apart so that it has the opening in the front. And you're just going to keep doing this for 10 rows with the same color. Following the same pattern as before, you go in with color number 2 and crochet half double crochet in each stitch for 10 rows. And you're just going to keep repeating this. As you can see, I have crocheted. It's easy to count because you can kind of count the big stripes to make sure it has the same amount, but the same length on each side so that the front and the back match. Now we need the other side, so you want to start crocheting the other side. Now we have an extremely long vest with no sleeves. So we're gonna start working on the sleeves and finding out how big those are. So I just put it on my body, make sure it looks all nice, and then this is where stitch markers will come. Of course I lost my stitch markers while making this video. Well, in this moment I found them again, but I used a piece of string and I put it on and then measure how wide I want the sleeves to be. So first you want to find the halfway point. So I just follow where we started making the neck and where it just switches over, and I find the halfway point of that. So you can kind of see where the top is so that you don't measure incorrectly. You can always change it later, but this just helps. So now I put that halfway point on the top of my shoulders, and I will begin to pinch to see how wide I want it. Honestly, it made it a lot easier when I just lined up the blocks and counted by that much. So I think for me it ended up being 60. So I knew that I would have 6 blocks. It's easier if you could try to find a point. Of course, if you want smaller or bigger, you can always do halfway, but this just made it a lot easier for me. And so now you want to mark on each side where the point is. You can always pull it together and then you want to mark it later so you can see how wide you need to crochet the sleeves. Now you can count how far from each stitch marker you went. You should have a total of 3 because it ties to both sides of it and the middle, and you're gonna count how wide they are. But of course, if you just did it from a block to block, you really don't need to, because I realized that after I was like, oh, this is 60 multiple of 10. I did not need to, but it's good to, just double check just in case. And then you want to half double crochet from stitch marker to stitch marker, repeating the same patterns. You're going to do the half double crochet the width of the sleeve. After 10 rows you switch colors again. I started with the different color because I ended up using a lot more of the other color and I thought it would even out. And it doesn't really matter which one you start with though, because you just can't really tell. But you're gonna repeat the crochet 10 rows, half double crochet 10 rows, and then switch to the other color until it's the length of the sleeve. And in order to do this, I just put the sleeve on. I just measured it, just kept putting it on and on again until it was a good length. And as you can see, I like the length of this one. This next part, we're going to make the trim, the ribbing of the sleeve. It's optional, but I like to have my ends of the sleeves a little snug. So I'm going to half double crochet in each stitch. For some reason, I changed the pattern and just didn't record this part. But it's a half double crochet because I ended up changing it later because it just makes it look a lot cleaner. At first I tried single crochet and it just wasn't as clean. So you start off with a half double crochet in each stitch, despite the wrong crocheting in the video. After the half double crochet, you're going to do a single crochet in each stitch, and this begins to make it a little bit smaller and tighter because the single crochets are a tighter stitch than the half double crochets. After that, in order to get the small look that you want, that I want at least, you're going to decrease 2 stitches together. And I also did not record this part. I don't know what was going on in this moment, but in order to decrease, instead of pulling all the way through the last 2 loops, you pull through 1 in the next 2 loops. So it scrunches it together, and then you should have 3 loops on your hook, and then you pull through 3. So in order to really start the ribbing after you've made it smaller, you're going to chain 8 single crochets in each stitch. Oh my god, sorry. You're going to chain 8 and then make a single crochet in each stitch. And so now we're going to be working up and down instead of side to side. And when you get to the bottom is when we slip stitch it down to the work in order to attach it. So I finished all the single crochets, so I slip stitch in 1, and then I slip stitch in 2, and then we're going to go back up, but working only in the back stitch of the single crochets. So there's like the V's, and you work in the back one, not the 2 that we usually go under. Sometimes I like to count because it can look like it adds an extra one, so you should always have 8. So I like to count just to check from the top. Then you single crochet in the back stitch of each one, and then we're just going to chain 1 and then go down, single crochet in the back stitch of each one, and then slip stitch 2, and just keep repeating that for the rest of the row, and you should get like these bumpy little ribbings which look nice. Now we have finished one sleeve, and you want to repeat it for the other sleeve. Once you have finished both of the sleeves, try your work on. Be proud because we're literally on the last step, the home stretch. And if you have made it this far, you're amazing. And this is where I wanted to completely give up because I was just going through it. But I couldn't because I didn't made it this far. It would be crazy of me to give up. So now you're going to sew down the sides of the body. So you're going to sew down the sleeve and then sew down the side of the body. And that's all we have to do. Not that much sewing. And it's really nice because they line up symmetrically. I think that would be the word. And the black lines up with the black, white with the white, the sleeve, everything just line up. So you really don't need stitch markers. But it can help. This is where you can either, if you really wanted to, you can slip stitch instead of using a sewing needle, but it's just quicker for me to do the sewing needle. Also, I highly suggest switching colors. I know it's annoying to in this I'm sewing with white yarn, but I did not switch for the black yarn, and you can see it. Honestly, I really don't wear my crochet work, even though I think I should start, and people probably won't notice, but the inside you can see when I'm sewing with the different colored yarn. So if you really you made it this far, you might as well take that last step in switching the colors. Sorry, I was watching the football game. But yeah, so you're just going to go down the sides and just take the inner loops and sew the pieces together, making sure everything's lined up. Just keep checking because you don't want to look back later and it just be completely misaligned. But this last part, you just have to sew through all this and then you're good to go. Now we are all done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Looking back, I did have fun making this, even though it was a long process. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe to my channel and give me a like. Thank you so much.